His hands were in my hair before I finished the last note. Not rough, not desperate, just there, like he had reached for something without deciding to, like his body had moved before his mind could stop it. I felt him go still the moment he realized what he'd done. We were standing in the middle of his recording studio at 2 a.m. My guitar was still vibrating, the last chord still hanging in the air between us. And Park Jiwoo, the man who hadn't heard a single sound in 14 months, had tears running silently down his face. "I heard it," he said. His voice was rough, unsteady in a way I had never heard from him before. "The last note, I heard it." I didn't move, didn't breathe. "Not clearly," he said quickly, like he was afraid to hope too loudly. Like hearing something through water, muffled, distant, but there. His jaw worked. It was there. My own eyes were burning. Because I knew what this meant. I also knew something he didn't yet. Something that was going to complicate everything. Hit subscribe, because what happens next, what I had been hiding from him for 3 weeks, was about to change both of our lives completely, and I need you with me till the very last word. I almost didn't go to Seoul. My name is Ajora Mensah, 27 years old, born in Lagos, Nigeria. Raised on music the way other children were raised on rice. It was in everything, the mornings, the evenings, the way my mother hummed while she cooked, and my father drummed his fingers on every surface he touched. I had been singing since before I could read, playing guitar since I was 8, writing my own songs since I was 12, in a notebook my father bought me from the market that had a picture of a lion on the cover and smelled like fresh ink. Music was not what I did, it was what I was. And 3 months ago, it was in serious danger of being taken from me. The music school my parents had built in our Lagos neighborhood, 20 years of their lives, 300 children learning to play, to sing, to find themselves through sound, was going to be demolished. The land had been sold to a developer. We had 4 months to either buy the building or lose everything my parents had built. The money required was more than I had ever seen in my life. Then the offer came. A management company in Seoul, representing Park Jiwoo, one of Korea's wealthiest private investors and a man known for his obsessive support of the arts, was looking for a performing artist for a series of private concerts. High-end, intimate, extraordinarily well-paid. The fee for 1 month of performances was enough to save the school. 1 month. I said yes before I finished reading the contract. I landed in Seoul on a Tuesday morning in October. The city received me the way Seoul received everyone, with complete indifference and absolute beauty. I stood outside the airport with my guitar case on my back and my suitcase beside me and looked at the skyline and felt, for the first time in 3 months, like something might be possible. The management company had sent a car. The driver, a quiet Korean man named Mr. Cho, who had the energy of someone who had seen everything and been surprised by none of it, drove me to a residential tower in Gangnam and handed me a key card without explanation. "Mr. Park's residence is on the 40th floor," he said. "Your apartment is on the 38th. He will not receive you tonight. Someone will contact you tomorrow with the schedule." "Can I ask?" I started. "Tomorrow," Mr. Cho said pleasantly. "Good evening, Miss Mensah." He drove away. I stood on the pavement with my guitar and my suitcase, and the particular feeling of someone who has traveled very far and arrived somewhere they don't fully understand yet. The schedule arrived at 7 the next morning via email. It was detailed and slightly unusual. I would perform 3 times per week, private setting, never more than 5 guests, sometimes just Mr. Park alone. Specific songs were not required. I was to play what I felt was right. Sessions would last between 45 minutes and 2 hours. I was not to discuss the performances with anyone outside the arrangement. At the bottom of the schedule, a single additional line. "Mr. Park has a medical condition that affects his hearing. Please be aware of this during performances. Further details will be provided at your first meeting." I read that line 4 times. A man who couldn't hear properly, had paid an extraordinary amount of money to listen to me sing. I didn't know what to make of that. I would find out that evening. His apartment was not what I expected. I had prepared myself for the particular coldness of a very wealthy person's space. The art on the walls, furniture nobody sits on aesthetic that money sometimes produced when it ran out of warmth to spend on. Instead, it was full of sound. Not loud sound, but evidence of it. Instruments in corners, recording equipment visible through a half-open door, vinyl records stacked in careful towers, a piano near the window that had clearly been played recently, sheet music scattered across its surface. This was not a man who collected music. This was a man who lived inside it. Park Jiwoo was standing near the piano when I was shown in. He was younger than I had imagined from his reputation. Mid-30s, lean build, dark hair slightly overgrown, wearing a simple dark sweater and jeans that told me this was how he actually lived, not how he performed living. His eyes were, I noticed this immediately, the eyes of someone listening very hard to something the rest of the room couldn't hear. He looked at me when I entered. And then he did something that surprised me. He spoke first. "Miss Mensah," his English was careful and precise. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for the opportunity." I set my guitar case down carefully. "Mr. Park, I was told about your—" "My hearing," he said it simply, like a fact about the weather. 14 months ago, I was in a building when a targeted explosion occurred nearby. The blast damage was, he paused. The doctors describe it as severe bilateral sensory neural hearing loss. In practical terms, I hear very little, mostly silence. "I'm sorry," I said. He looked at me with those careful eyes. "Most people say that." "I mean it." Something shifted in his expression, slightly. "I know," he said. "That's why I agreed to meet you personally." He gestured toward the seating area. We sat. Between us, the particular silence of two people who did not yet know how to speak to each other honestly, but were both the kind of people who would eventually try. "Why music?" I asked. "If you can't." "Can't hear it?" He finished the sentence without defensiveness. "That's what everyone wonders. Why pay for something you can't experience?" He looked at his hands. "Before the explosion, I spent 20 years building an arts foundation, music specifically. I funded composers, performers, recording studios, music education programs in underserved communities." He paused. "Music was not a hobby for me. It was—" He stopped. "What it was," I said quietly. He looked at me. "Yes," he said, "exactly that." "So why did you stop?" "I didn't stop funding it." "But you stopped being near it." A pause. Something moved across his face. "Being near something you love when you can no longer." He stopped again. "When you can no longer access it the way you used to, it is its own specific grief." I understood that in a way I hadn't expected. "My music school might close," I said. It came out before I decided to say it. "In Lagos. My parents built it. I came here to earn enough to save it." He looked at me steadily. "I know," he said quietly. "I read your background carefully before the offer was made." "Then you know why I said yes." "I do," he paused. "And I want you to know that whatever happens with the performances, the money is yours. You've already earned it by being here." I looked at him. "What does that mean? Whatever happens with the performances?" He was quiet for a moment. "It means I don't know if this will work," he said honestly. "I have tried other musicians, 3 over the past year. I could feel the vibrations technically. I could see their mouths moving. But I felt—" He touched his chest briefly. "Nothing here, the way I used to feel music. Whatever connected it to something inside me seems to be—" He looked away. "Gone. And you think I'll be different?" "I don't know," he said, "but something about your recordings made me want to try one more time." I thought about that for a moment. "Okay," I said, "one condition." He waited. "I won't perform music that isn't honest," I said. "I don't do rehearsed, I don't do set lists, I play what's true in the moment. If that's not what you're looking for—" "That's exactly what I'm looking for," he said. Besties, welcome back to Afro-Korean Love Stories. Drop your location right now. I want to see everyone from the USA, UK, Canada, Australia, Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, and everywhere else in the world. If you are new here, subscribe immediately because this story is just beginning and you will not want to miss where it goes. To my returning besties, stay till the end. I promise. Now let's continue. The first performance was the strangest experience of my professional life. I sat in his living room with my guitar, and he sat across from me, not close, not far, just present, and I played. He couldn't hear it. He had told me that clearly. But he watched me the way I had never been watched before, not the way audiences watched, with their phones and their expectations and their need to be entertained. He watched the way you watched something you were trying to memorize before it disappeared. I played for an hour. When I finished, he sat quietly for a moment. "What did that feel like?" he asked. "When you play?" The question surprised me. "What do you mean?" "Describe it. What happens in your body?" I thought about it honestly. It starts in my hands, the muscle memory, and then something opens in my chest, like a door, and everything I've been carrying that day, the worry and the noise and it goes into the music instead of staying in me. He was quiet for a moment. "I used to feel that," he said, "when I listened." "The door opening." "Yes," he looked at his hands. "It's been closed for 14 months. I looked at him, at this man who had built his life around something that had been taken from him, who sat across from a musician he couldn't hear and asked her what music felt like because he was trying to remember. "I'll come back Thursday," I said. He looked up. "I know that's the schedule," I said. "I'm just telling you I want to." By the end of week 1, I had learned things about Park Jiwoo that his reputation had not prepared me for. He was funny, dryly, quietly funny, in the way of people who observed everything and said very little, but when they did say something it was precise and unexpected. He made me laugh twice on Thursday and once on Saturday, and each time he looked slightly surprised by the laugh, like he had not fully intended to produce it. He was also, underneath the careful control, grieving something enormous. Not just the hearing, something else. Something he carried in the particular set of his shoulders at the end of evenings when he thought I wasn't looking. I didn't ask. Not yet. I had learned that some things needed to be offered rather than extracted. And I was carrying my own things. The school's deadline was 90 days away. My mother called every Sunday. The updates were not good. The developer had begun preliminary legal proceedings. Time was moving in one direction. I sent money home after every performance, watched the number grow, calculated the distance to the target. And I played music 3 times a week for a man who couldn't hear it. Except, and this was the thing I was trying not to examine too closely, something was happening. Not with his hearing, not yet, something else. When I played, he leaned forward slightly, involuntarily, like his body was reaching toward something his ears couldn't provide, like the music was reaching him through some other channel. And when I sang, specifically when I sang, his breathing changed. I noticed it the second week, how his breath slowed, how the tension he carried in his shoulders released slightly, how his eyes, which were almost always guarded, became something else. Open just slightly, just enough to matter. I told myself it was the vibrations, that his body was responding to frequency even when his ears couldn't process it. I told myself that and mostly believed it. It happened on a Wednesday. Not a scheduled performance day. I was in my apartment working on a new song, one that had been forming since I arrived in Seoul, fed by something I didn't have a name for yet, when Mr. Cho knocked on my door. "Mr. Park requests that you come upstairs," he said, "if you are available." I was available. I found Jiwoo in his recording studio, the room I had seen through the half-open door on my first visit. He was standing at the mixing board, headphones around his neck, looking at something on the screen with an expression that was half technical and half something much older and sadder. He looked up when I came in. "I want to show you something," he said, "if that's all right." He turned the screen toward me. It was a waveform, audio visualization. And he walked me through it, what it showed, what the doctors had explained, what the blast had done to the specific frequencies his auditory system could and couldn't process. Most of the hearing range was gone. The damage was severe, and the prognosis was what it was. But there was something else in the data. Something a specialist had flagged 8 months ago and then abandoned as an anomaly too small to matter. A narrow band of frequency, very specific. Very limited, that showed faint residual response. They said it was too narrow to be meaningful, Jiwoo said. That even if something fell in that range, the signal would be too weak to register consciously. I looked at the screen, at the specific frequency range highlighted in the data. What range is it? I asked. He told me. I went very still, because I knew that frequency. Not technically, not from studying audio science, from 30 years of living in it. From my music teacher in Lagos telling me when I was 9 years old that I had an unusually rare natural vocal resonance, that my singing voice sat in a specific tonal range that was uncommon in formal training and almost never produced naturally. The range Jiwoo had just described was mine. I stood in his recording studio and understood something that I was not yet ready to say out loud. His hearing was not entirely gone. And the narrow window that remained, the small damaged door that was still fractionally open, was tuned to exactly my voice. Besties, are you still with me? Drop I'm hooked in the comments right now, because Ajora just discovered something that changes everything, and she has to decide what to do with it. To everyone in the USA, Canada, UK, Australia, Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, drop your country. Stay with me. This is where it gets complicated. I didn't tell him. I want to be honest about that. I stood in his recording studio with the knowledge of what his data meant, and I made a decision in the space of 30 seconds that I am not entirely proud of. I didn't tell him because I was afraid. Not of him, of what telling him would mean. If I told him that my voice specifically might reach his residual hearing, he would want to know if it worked. He would want sessions every day, not 3 times a week. He would want to push the possibility as far as it could go. And I had 90 days before I had to go home. I had watched him for 2 weeks. I had seen how he talked about music, how his whole face changed when he described what it used to be for him. I had seen the grief he carried and how carefully he contained it. If I told him and it worked, and then I left, what would that do to him? I told myself I needed more information first, that I needed to confirm the theory before I raised a hope that might not hold. I told myself a lot of things. And I kept performing, 3 times a week, and I started carefully, quietly, without telling him why, singing more. Not performance singing, just present, natural, the register I inhabited when I wasn't thinking about it. And I watched his face. What I saw made me catch my breath every single session. He was hearing something, not fully, not clearly, but something. I could see it in the way he turned his head slightly, the way he sometimes closed his eyes mid-song, the way he once pressed his fingers very lightly to the side of his throat, like he was trying to feel vibration, and then stopped himself. He didn't know what was happening. He thought it was the physical resonance of the guitar, the vibration through the floor. He didn't know it was my voice. And I didn't tell him. For 3 weeks. What I was also losing. Here is the thing I haven't told you yet. While I was watching Jiwoo's hearing show the smallest impossible signs of life, my own voice was disappearing. It started in week 2. A scratchiness I told myself was dry Seoul air. A slight roughness in the upper register I told myself was fatigue. By week 3, it was more than that. I had been under stress for 3 months. Financial fear, the school deadline, the weight of being the person who had to fix everything. And stress, sustained, accumulated, unprocessed stress, did specific things to vocal cords. I knew this. I knew it professionally and personally. My voice was going. Not completely, not yet, but the range that mattered, the specific tonal quality that sat in that narrow frequency band, was becoming unreliable. Some days strong, some days barely there. I started recording every session, listening back alone at night, measuring the deterioration the way you measured something you were losing and couldn't stop. I did not tell Jiwoo. I was performing a miracle for a man who didn't know it was a miracle, and I was losing the instrument that made it possible. And I had no idea how to tell him either thing. It was week 4, a Tuesday, not a scheduled performance night. I had been working on the new song, the one that had been building since I arrived, the one that I now understood was about him, about this, about a man listening for something he couldn't quite hear, and a woman singing herself smaller trying to be heard, and something wasn't right. My voice, I tried a run I had done 1,000 times and the top note came out broken, cracked, wrong. I sat in my apartment for a long time. Then I picked up my guitar and went upstairs. I don't know what I was going to say. I hadn't decided. I just knew I couldn't carry both secrets alone anymore. He was in the recording studio when I knocked, looked up when I came in, read my face with those careful eyes. "Something's wrong," he said. Not a question. "I need to tell you 2 things," I said, "and I need you to let me finish before you respond to either of them." He waited. I told him about the frequency data, about my vocal range, about what I had understood 3 weeks ago and chosen not to say. I watched his face change as I spoke, the careful, controlled expression moving through something, confusion, then understanding, then something I couldn't name. "You've known for 3 weeks," he said when I finished. "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want to give you something I wasn't sure I could keep giving you." I looked at my hands. "And because I was leaving in 30 days and I didn't know what it would mean for you if." "What's the second thing?" he said. I looked up. His expression was very still, like a man bracing. "My voice is going," I said. "Not permanently, but the register that, the specific range that reaches you, it's been deteriorating for 2 weeks. Stress-related, my vocal cords." I paused. "I don't know how much longer I can." I didn't finish the sentence, because that was when it happened. He stood, crossed the room, and before I understood what was happening, he was sitting beside me on the studio floor, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him, close enough that when he spoke his voice was very quiet. "Play something," he said. "Jiwoo. Right now, whatever you were working on, play it." I looked at him. Then I picked up my guitar. And I played the song that was about him, the one I hadn't named yet, the one that started low and slow and built to the note, the one in the specific range that I had been protecting unconsciously for weeks. My voice held. Not perfectly, I could feel the effort, but it held. And when I reached the last note, when I let it go, let it ring in the recording studio at 2 in the morning, his hands came up and found my hair. Not rough, not desperate, just there. The way you reached for something real when you were afraid it was going to disappear. After, he had tears on his face when he said it. I heard it, the last note, I heard it. We sat on the studio floor for a long time after that, my guitar between us, neither of us speaking, the kind of silence that wasn't empty. "I need to tell you something now," he said eventually. I waited. "My wife died 18 months ago," he said. "Before the explosion, he stopped. She was a musician, a cellist. The explosion happened at a memorial concert I organized for her." His jaw worked. I wanted the music to be what she would have wanted, and someone used the event to target one of the guests, and he stopped again. I was standing too close. The room was very quiet. "The hearing loss," I said softly, "was the last thing she took from me," he said. "That's what it felt like. The last piece of her, the music, gone." He looked at me. I stopped going near it because being near music and not being able to feel it the way she taught me to feel it was. He didn't finish. He didn't need to. "She taught you to listen," I said. "She taught me everything," he said simply. I thought about my father, about the notebook with the lion on the cover, about the things people gave us that we carried long after they were gone. "The music school," I said, In Lagos, my parents built it for the same reason, so children would have someone to teach them. I paused. My father died 2 years ago. The school is the last thing he built. Jiwoo looked at me. That's why you came, he said. That's why I came. We sat with that for a while. Two people who had both lost something enormous and had arrived at the same Tuesday night in Seoul from completely different directions. I want to help with the school, he said. Jiwoo. Not as payment, not as charity. He looked at me directly. As someone who understands what it means when the place where music lives is threatened. He paused. Let me help. I looked at him for a long time. Okay, I said, but I want something in return. Name it. Let me take you to a doctor who specializes in exactly this kind of hearing damage. Someone I researched 2 weeks ago when I figured out what your frequency data meant. I held his gaze. Your hearing is not entirely gone, Jiwoo, and I think there are people who can do more than you've been told. He was quiet. You've been treating this like a closed door, I said. I don't think it is. And if it is, then we find out together, and that's still better than not knowing. He looked at me, those careful eyes that had been listening hard for 14 months. Together, he said quietly. Together, I said. The specialist's name was Dr. Han. She worked out of a clinic in Sinchon that didn't look like much from the outside and contained, inside, some of the most precise audiological equipment I had ever seen. She spent 4 hours with Jiwoo on the first appointment. I sat in the waiting room with my guitar on my knee and called my mother twice and tried not to count minutes. When he came out, his expression was the carefully controlled one, the one I had learned to read. She wants to try a specific protocol, he said. Targeted sound therapy combined with a surgical intervention she has had success with in 3 similar cases. He paused. She cannot promise full restoration, but she believes, he stopped. His jaw worked slightly. She believes meaningful recovery is possible. I looked at him. Jiwoo. She also said, he stopped again. She said the fact that I have been responding to a specific vocal frequency suggests the neural pathways are not as degraded as the original assessment indicated. That the response has possibly been, he looked at me, keeping them active. I felt something enormous move through my chest. All those sessions, I said. Were not nothing, he said, apparently. I pressed my lips together very hard. He looked at me with those eyes. You're not going to cry, he said. I'm absolutely not going to cry, I agreed, eyes completely burning. Good, he said, because I need you to come back next week for the first therapy session, and I need you functional. I'm always functional. You cried at the vending machine last week because it was out of the crackers you liked. That was a legitimate emotional response to a logistical failure. He laughed. The real one, the one I had been collecting since the first time it happened, the one that transformed his whole face. I let myself smile. The music school did not close. Jiwoo's foundation became its primary funder, not quietly, not anonymously, but with the specific visible commitment of a man who wanted the world to know that a music school in Lagos, Nigeria, was worth saving. The press around it brought 3 additional donors. My mother called me crying. My brother called me pretending he wasn't crying. I extended my time in Seoul. Not indefinitely, not with a contract, just for now. For the therapy sessions that were showing results that Dr. Han described as remarkable and that Jiwoo described as slow and that I described as exactly enough. For the Sunday mornings when he sat beside me while I played and told me what he heard, which was more each week, not everything, not yet, maybe not ever fully, but more. And for the evenings on his apartment terrace, when Seoul did what Seoul did, blazed and moved and existed with its whole chest. And we sat in the specific, comfortable quiet of 2 people who had stopped pretending they were anything other than exactly what they were to each other. Play something, he said one evening. I played for 2 hours this afternoon. Play something small. I picked up the guitar, played the song that had started the night everything changed. The one that was about him. The one I had named eventually, just 2 words, simple, true. Still here. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then, I heard the whole thing. I looked at him. Not clearly, he said quickly, the way he always said it, careful with hope. But there, I said. But there, he agreed. He reached across and took my hand. I let him. Seoul blazed below us. My mother's music school was safe in Lagos. His wife's memory lived in the foundation that now bore her name. And 2 people who had both lost something enormous sat on a terrace holding hands, still finding their way back to what had been taken from them. Together. And that, besties, is the story of the Korean billionaire who lost his hearing, and the Nigerian singer, whose voice was the one thing he could still hear. The story of what happens when 2 people are each other's answer without knowing it yet, when the thing you came for turns out to be smaller than the thing you found. When saving something, a school, a foundation, a piece of a person that grief tried to take, turns out to go both ways. If this story moved you, if the recording studio scene hit you, if the moment he reached for her hair broke something open in you, if the 3 months later ending left you full in your chest, hit that like button right now. Drop beautiful in the comments if this was worth every minute. Drop still here if the ending got you. To my special bestie Victoria Morris watching from Roseville, California, I see you. This one was for you today. And to everyone watching from the USA, Canada, the UK, Australia, Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, Kenya, New Zealand, and everywhere else this story has traveled, drop your location. I want to see the whole world in these comments. Now, if you scroll past without liking, commenting, subscribing, and sharing, it means you're on the side of the developer who tried to demolish the music school. The one who wanted to erase 20 years of children learning to find themselves through sound. And I know that is not you. You believe music matters. You believe healing is possible. You believe the right voice finds the right person at the right time. So prove it, like this video. Subscribe to Afro-Korean Love Stories. Turn on that notification bell. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that the things we lose are not always gone forever. Ajora's voice found Jiwoo's hearing in the dark. And they found each other in the light. If they could. So can you. Until next time, besties, I'll see you in the next story.